In today's video, I'm going to show you how you can withdraw more than just 4% from your portfolio if you know the right information and you're willing to apply a few basic rules to your portfolio. Hey everyone, I'm James Knoll, founder of Root Financial, and I'm here to teach you what you need to know to create a secure retirement. Now, the 4% rule isn't just something that existed. It was something that was based upon research by a man named Bill Bengen. The question was, as people were starting to retire and people were relying less on pensions and more on their own retirement savings, the question became, well, how much can I withdraw from this without running the risk of running out of money? That's where Bill Bengen's research came in. He back-tested this and he said, well, let's understand this and let's see how much you can withdraw during different market environments and different inflationary environments to understand what's the percentage you can take and be reasonably assured that your portfolio will last for at least 30 years. Here's the thing though. You have to understand a few basic assumptions of the 4% rule to understand how it might apply to your portfolio in reality. So here's a quick overview of the 4% rule, and then let's go into how you might be able to even improve this so that you can do better with your portfolio. Number one, as Bill Bengen was looking at this, he was looking at years and years and years and decades of research saying, what if you take a portfolio that's 50% invested in the S&P 500, so large US stocks, and 50% invested in intermediate term treasuries, so US bonds. So he said, if you take that portfolio and on January 1st of every single year, let's see how much we can withdraw and let's see how long that portfolio will last. So that 4% number, that's not because that's the only number Bill Bengen actually tested. He tested many numbers. He said, what if it was 5% that you take out? And in fact, there's a lot of years where taking out 5% of your portfolio, you were just fine. Your portfolio would have lasted for 30 or more years. He also has tested 6% per year. There was a lot of years where a portfolio could support withdrawals of 6%, but there was also many years where it would only last for 15 to 20 years. So where that 4% comes from isn't because that's a magic number where that's the most you can take out in any given year. It was the highest withdrawal you could take, regardless of what would have happened in the back-tested simulation, and still be reasonably assured that your portfolio is going to last at least for 30 years. So that was a starting point of his research, and it was a very good starting point because until then, there was really no rule around how much you could take out. Now, an interesting thing to note is that Bill Bengen later added to his research. He said, look, maybe we don't just do 50% large US stocks and 15% intermediate term bonds. What if we add some small companies to this as well? In other words, increase the diversification. Well, what that did is it increased the initial starting withdrawal to about 4.5%. So this isn't to say that 4% is a magic number. It was based on a very specific allocation, back-tested over a specific period of time. And another thing to note is this was assuming no adjustments. This is assuming you retire, you start taking a specific percentage, adjust it for inflation, and that's it. You're completely hands-off. You're not applying any dynamic rules or any dynamic formulas. You're simply taking a starting amount, adjusting it for inflation, and then seeing how long that will last. So why is it important to note these things? It's important because so often 4% is almost viewed as this golden magic formula and that's all anyone can do. Number one, that's not what some people can do if they're not invested the right way. I see some people, and based upon their investment allocations, 4% is far too much for them to take out. They're so conservative that if they were to actually apply the 4% rule, they would likely run out of money before that 30-year time period's up. On the other hand, I see many other people who are maybe invested in a much more diversified portfolio than Bill Bengen talked about, and they could probably support a much higher withdrawal rate. So when you stick to the 4% rule, not that it's bad, it was really great research as a starting point, but you might be selling yourself short. For example, even in Bill Bengen's research, had you retired in 1975, for example, and just had 50% US stocks, 50% intermediate term bonds, you could have supported a withdrawal rate of closer to 7.5%. So had you just stuck with 4%, the real world implications of that is you're leaving a lot of money on the table, and the real world implications of that, you're leaving a lot of experiences on the table. You're leaving a lot of living on the table. If you have $1 million, the difference between 4% and 7.5% is the difference between $40,000 of income and $75,000 of income. How much more could you live if you had a way of improving that and not just basing your withdrawals on the minimum amount that you could take regardless of what you're retiring into? Now, one thing that I don't like about the 4% rule, and this is not to knock the research is incredible and it's kind of served as the foundation for future iterations of this, but let's assume that you're an individual and you retire with $1 million on October 9th of 2007. Let's compare that to another individual who retires on March 6th of 2009. Now, the first person retires with $1 million, the second person retires with $700,000. Is it fair to say that the first person can spend 4% per year forever, which would be $40,000 based on $1 million, and the second person can only spend $28,000 per year, which is 4% of $700,000? Well, based upon the 4% rule, that's how it would go. Well, in reality, these are the same person. If the person in 2007, October of 2007, had $1 million after going through the downturn of 08, 09, they would have had about $700,000 with a 50-50 allocation a year and a half later. So it should stand to reason that the same person should be able to spend the same amount, but this rule, if there's no dynamic adjustments and it's simply take a snapshot of your starting portfolio value and take 4% forever, it misses some of that. There's no way of increasing your spending or decreasing your spending. It's really just a snapshot in time and then going with that for the next 30 years. So that's one of the weaknesses of this approach. The good thing is it says, look, if you limit your spending to this amount, you're probably going to be just fine for at least 30 years. The bad news is markets are dynamic, inflation is dynamic, your needs are dynamic. There's so much that happens over the course of a 30-year retirement that to simply lock in a withdrawal rate at one point and never adjust it outside of inflation misses out on a lot of real life. Really what you should be doing, or what I recommend people do, is have a more dynamic approach. Number one, have a more dynamic asset allocation. This was great research, but it was based on 50% large US stocks, 50% intermediate term bonds. It's not the best portfolio for everyone. In fact, I would argue that's probably not the best portfolio for most people. So what happens when you diversify that more? What happens if you have more in stocks and less in bonds? What that starts to do is it starts to change how much you can withdraw. That's step one. Step two, what if you apply some basic rules to this? Does it make sense that you should take 4% out of your portfolio only? Well, what about that rule, or what about that example where you retire in 1975? Had you done so, you would have left a lot of income on the table. Now, in 1975, you had no way of knowing that the next 30 years were going to be really strong years, and you were going to have some wins in your sales to help you spend more. You don't know that in the moment, but if you have a formula, if you have some rules that you're following that say if this happens, you freeze your spending. If this happens, you take a little cut in your spending. If this happens, you increase your spending. If you follow those rules, what it allows you to do is, one, start taking more money out of your portfolio earlier than just 4%. But number two, and probably more importantly, it allows you to make adjustments along the way. When do you need to cut spending or freeze spending just temporarily when there's a downturn in the market? Versus at what point can you actually increase your spending? Are there thresholds at which your portfolio hits, or that your portfolio hits, that allow you to say, I can bump spending by 10%. I can bump spending because my goal is not to take all this money to the grave. My goal is to get as much life out of this as I possibly can. That's a framework, or that's an approach that will allow you to do better than the 4% rule over time. So this video is all about the 4% rule, what it's based upon and what you can expect from it going forward. If you want to understand more about this dynamic rules-based approach that will allow you to do better than the 4% rule, be sure to check out this video above. Thanks for watching. This is James Knoll with Root Financial Partners. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to share it with someone else who you think would benefit from this information. And also, please be sure to like and subscribe for more content just like this. Finally, if you'd like to see how we help clients create a secure retirement, be sure to check out our website at rootfinancialpartners.com.